let's work out how we fix it. And then afterwards, he's just like, why did the mistake happen? And I was like, honestly, I just rushed it. I didn't spend the time doing the detail. I was like, and I was already at this point in a job that I felt too young to be in. Everyone else was older than me, and I was management. So I already had these proper like self-conscious feelings about it. And I genuinely thought, oh, this is it. They're all going to think I'm an idiot and I'm going to get the sack. But actually, the way he dealt with it, the way he went through it, was like, let's fix the problem first. And then let's just work out why it happened so we don't do it again. And I was so grateful to that. And like to this day, I'm like, okay, a mistake's happened. Why did it happen? And why do we not do it again? But I think unless we can actually do that, unless we can reassess that relationship we have with mistakes and risk, then we will just be put off from taking opportunities over and over again because we just remember that momentary horrible feeling and we think about that as the worst case scenario. But actually, I had a stat, and I cannot remember for the life of me where I got this from or who it was, and I'm going to do some research to find out. But one of the stats I heard was that 2% of worst case scenarios actually happen. 2%. If you told me that actually you've got a 98% success rate, I'm going to be buying lodge tickets every day. You will be doing all the risks if you genuinely think 90%, success rates. That 2% suddenly, that horrible feeling from mistakes or things not working out, suddenly feels completely irrelevant. But we have to be able to turn it around in our heads. It's the same as the way overwhelm. So I use this a lot because when I do a roadmap with people, it's a long day and I give them a lot of information. And they're like, maybe overwhelmed with it all. And I'm like, but it's exciting. It's like you need to be able to switch one feeling to the other, but there's a bit of work in the middle of it. So that overwhelm can be excitement when you realize it's overwhelming because there's so much you can do, or there's so much to do. But actually, the excitement is there's so much you can do. It's the same thing, but just you switch it in your head. So yes, I've made that mistake. I feel rubbish for it, and I've got to deal with the consequences. But once I work out why I did it, then I can move on knowing how not to do it again or how to make it better. It's actually, again, it's coming back, it's quite freeing to have done the work rather than just sit in a horrible place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the school system obviously has a lot to answer for, because at school you're never allowed to make a mistake, or you get ridiculed for making a mistake or punished for making a mistake. And I saw it was a wee viral clip the other day of a woman saying like school doesn't prepare you for being a business person or being in real life because of that. This not being collaborative, you've got to do everything by yourself, you're not allowed to look up things, you have to memorize everything, and then you're never allowed to make a mistake. And if you've got that, we'll call it trauma, if you've experienced that in school, that trauma sitting with you, and then you come into business, then you're terrified to do it because you're like, oh, remember that time I was made to stand in front of the class and everybody pointed and laughed at me? And
Yeah,
they're yeah, it's horrible. I had that experience when I was in primary 3. I couldn't work out how to spell a word, and I'd looked at the alphabet train and the word wasn't on the alphabet train, so the next step was to go to the teacher, and the teacher then got the whole class to tell me how to spell this word, and they all chanted it at me, and I was so distressed by this that I couldn't even remember what it was that they had said to how to spell it, and I was just like shaking, absolutely terrified from this whole experience, and she didn't need to do that.
No,
Like that.
no.
Yeah, so then you're like, how do you unpick that and how do you unlearn that to hug that little child and go, that woman was an absolute bitch?
Yeah, this is it. This is a whole other podcast. My thoughts on the education system, because I understand you have a teacher, potentially 30 kids in front of you, and something to do with like I don't know what it's called. So obviously now we've got a lot more diagnosis with different sort of neurodiversity, whether it be ADHD or autism, dyslexia and everything. So when the current paper, whatever it is for schools, as to how you deliver, apparently there's been a 75% increase of diagnosis since that paper's has been written and it's not been updated. So I can understand that it must be so difficult for teachers now. Like I can't think of a worse job, honestly, than having to try and teach so many children with so many individual needs. And that's not fair either on the teacher or the kids. But at what point are they going to change the system in general to be real life? Do you know, it's everyone has to do the same thing. Actually, it's not the real world. We all do things differently. It's exactly what we talked about today, right? We all do things individually that's based on us. Because that's what works, that's where people thrive. I actually saw this thing on the internet, and I don't know how much it's true because it's AI, but it was basically a class of children who they were primary school and they spent like 6 months only learning from AI. So all their classes were them at a computer. Now they got breaks, they still had the social interaction side of things, but actually all their classes were taught to them by AI that tailored to them and how they work. So some of them are sitting in couches, some are on beanbags, some are standing. Some were obviously learning from videos and everything, but that was able to tailor the training to them. And the time it took them to learn reduced dramatically, and their results went up through the roof. And they had so much more time. So it only worked in the mornings, but in the afternoons they just played or did PE or interactive stuff with other kids. And it was a win-win. Now, I'm not saying sitting at a computer with an AI is the way forward for education, but it just proves that if you can actually tailor education to an individual, the way we tailor our businesses to us, it's going to be a success. It's going to be so much more successful. But yeah, I'm not going to get into the education system because that'll just annoy me.
Yeah, I did some work with a neurodivergent charity, and I was at one of the trainings, and they were talking about like 67% of the population is neurodivergent because there's a lot of different diagnoses under that umbrella because you've got Tourette's and epilepsy, dyslexia, dyscalculia, autism, ADHD, ADD, all these different ones. And it's like, well, if 67% of the population is neurodivergent, that means that neurotypical is not actually typical. Neurodivergent is what's typical.